The crimson warning lights pulsed across the command center's cold metallic walls. Captain Veltron pressed his three-fingered hand against the console, his gaze fixed on the dwindling numbers on the screen. Shield integrity at 30%, 28%, 25%. Every second brought them closer to annihilation. "Captain, they're deploying more dropships," Officer Krenna reported, her voice trembling. 50 more incoming from orbit. Veltron glanced at the tactical display. The screen teemed with red markers. Vorthan attack ship Siege, carrying 30 soldiers. The grim math was undeniable. The colony's 200 remaining security officers faced an onslaught of thousands. "How long until the shields collapse?" Veltron demanded. 4 hours, maybe 5 if we divert all power, Chief Engineer Mortex replied. The Zephyrian's blue complexion had turned ashen with dread. "But then we'll lose life support in the outer sectors." Veltron shut his eyes briefly. Kepler's Rest was home to 50,000 Souls families, miners and laborers, drawn here by the promise of prosperity. None deserved this fate. The Vorthan Empire had arrived unbidden 3 weeks ago, their obsidian warships blotting the skies. Their demand was simple: relinquish the mining rights to the rare crystals that powered FTL engines. Veltron had refused. Kepler's Rest was a lawful Galactic Federation colony. Its inhabitants were peaceful civilians, not combatants. But the Vorthons didn't care. Admiral Crexton had given them 24 hours to abandon the colony. When Veltron requested more time, the Vorthines obliterated the colony's defense, fleet 12 ships, and 300 lives lost in half an hour. Now, the ground assault had begun. Vorthan soldiers, clad in black armor like chitinous insects, wielded weapons that melted rock and shattered resolve. Their prisoners became slaves, their cruelty legendary. Veltron would not let his people suffer that fate. "Sir, we've lost." Contact with Sector 7, Communications Officer Yenta whispered. "The outer defenses have fallen, and mining crews are retreating to the shelters." Veltron nodded. "Oh, the civilians were following protocol, taking refuge in underground bunkers, stocked with provisions for 2 weeks. But if the shields failed, the Vorthons would dig them out like vermin." "Any word from the Federation?" Veltron asked. "None, sir." "Their jamming is too strong," Yenta replied. Veltron approached the viewport, surveying the smoldering ruins. Of his colony, once pristine and orderly, Kepler's Rest was now a battlefield. Smoke billowed from shattered buildings, and the streets were littered with the fallen defenders and invaders alike. "Captain," Rena called out, "Admiral Crexton is hailing us again." Veltron sighed. The Vorthan leader's messages were always the same: surrender or face obliteration. "Put him through," Veltron said. The screen flickered, revealing Crexton's towering scaled form. His yellow eyes glinted with malice. Captain Veltron Crexton growled, "Your resistance is futile. Your shields falter, your soldiers perish. Why prolong the inevitable? These people are under my protection." Veltron replied evenly, "I will not hand them over to be enslaved." Crexton's laughter rumbled like an avalanche. "Slaves. Only the healthy ones. The rest will die. Is that preferable to surrender?" "Yes," Veltron answered without hesitation. Crexton's expression darkened. "So be it. In 1 hour, I will commence orbital bombardment of your civilian sectors. Every minute you resist will cost 1,000 lives." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. "What are your orders, sir?" Krenna asked, her voice trembling. Veltron gazed at the blank screen. His thoughts on the families huddled in the bunkers, trusting him to keep them safe. "We fight," he said quietly. "We make them pay for every step, protect the civilians as long as we can, and pray someone hears our call." Far from Kepler's Rest, in the vastness of space, a human patrol ship drifted. Its communications array picked up a faint, fractured distress signal. Among the static, 3 words emerged: "Civilians under attack." 3 days earlier, the USS Defiant, a 2-kilometer behemoth scarred from countless battles, prowled the void. armed to the teeth, it carried the might of humanity and an answer that would change everything. Predator-class Captain Jake Morrison sat firmly in his command chair on the bridge. At 45, with gray streaks in his hair and a weariness in his eyes, he bore the marks of 20 grueling years of military service. Experience had taught him that space was a battleground teeming with threat spirits. Slavers and empires convinced that might made right. Morrison had spent his career proving them wrong. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something, said Communications Officer Pete Collins, his fingers gliding over the controls. At 25, Collins was fresh-faced, sharp-eyed, and quick-handed. What? Kind of something, Morrison asked, leaning forward. Distress signal, sir, Collins replied. It's faint, originating from the Kepler system, about 3 days away at top speed. Morrison's brow furrowed. The Kepler system was far from typical patrol routes, its only point of interest being a mining colony on its fourth planet. Ken, you clear up the signal? Collins worked in silence as static filled the bridge speakers. Slowly a voice emerged, speaking in the galactic lingua franca. This is Captain Belter of Kepler's Rest Colony. We are under attack by Vorthan forces. Our defense fleet is destroyed. 50,000 civilians need immediate evacuation. Please, anyone receiving this message, we need help. They're killing innocent people. The bridge fell quiet. All eyes turned. To Morrison, the captain stared at the screen, calculating. The signal, already hours old, meant they could arrive too late. When was this message sent? He asked. Approximately 18 hours ago, sir, Collins replied after a moment. Commander Lisa Grant stepped beside Morrison's chair, small but formidable, with dark hair and piercing green eyes. Grant had served alongside him for 8 years, reading his thoughts as easily as a book. Jake, it's a colony full of civilians, she said softly. We can't ignore this. I know, Morrison said. But we're alone out here. The nearest Federation fleet is 2 weeks away. If the Vorthons obliterated a defense fleet, what chance does one ship have? Chief Engineer Bobby Torres chimed in from his station. A bear of a man with oil-streaked hands and unyielding confidence, he said, The Defiant isn't just any ship, Captain. We're equipped with the best shields and weapons. We face worse odds. Flight Commander Amy Sullivan, tall and athletic with short blonde hair, nodded. My pilots are ready, sir. We've trained for situations like this. We'll hit them where it hurts. Morrison looked around at his crew veterans, loyal to the core. These were people who had stood by him in the Century Wars and countless skirmishes. They wouldn't turn away now, and neither would he. Torres, can you push the engines beyond normal limits? The engineer grinned. How far are we talking? Enough to cut travel time to 2 days? Torres let out a low whistle. That's pushing the reactors to 110%. If anything goes wrong, we could lose propulsion entirely. Can you make it work? Yes, sir, but we'll need to cut all non-essentials. No hot showers, no recreation, no chef-prepared meals. Morrison gave a faint smile. I think we can survive without those. He turned to the navigator. Set course for the Kepler system. Maximum burn. Sir, the navigator replied, fingers dancing across the console. Course laid in. Engage. The Defiant surged forward, its engines roaring as it accelerated into the void. The ship vibrated with the strain of dangerous speeds, and the crew felt the urgency in their bones. This was no routine patrol. It was a mission against time, Commander. Grant settled at her station. I'll pull up everything we have on Vorthon fleet tactics. If we're facing an invasion force, we need every advantage we can get. Good thinking, Morrison said. Sullivan, ready your squadron? Check every fighter full combat load. We may need to strike multiple targets. Already on it, sir, Sullivan replied. Final diagnostics are underway. Dr. Dan Rodriguez entered the bridge. The older medical officer's gentle hands belied the steel in his voice. Captain, I heard about the mission. How many civilians are we looking at? 50,000, Morrison said. Rodriguez's face paled. Our medical facilities we can handle maybe 500 serious cases, Dr. Rodriguez said grimly. If the colony is under attack, there could be thousands of wounded. Do what you can, Doc, Morrison replied. Can't convert cargo bays into temporary medical wards. If you have to, we'll deal with the details after we save them. Throughout the night, the crew prepared for the battle ahead. Grant analyzed enemy ship designs and weaponry. Sullivan drilled her pilots on tactical maneuvers. And Torres pushed the engines to their limits, monitoring for any signs of failure. Morrison stood by the viewport watching stars blur into streaks as the Defiant hurtled through hyperspace. Somewhere ahead, 50,000 lives hung by a thread, unaware that help was on the way. Collins, Morrison said suddenly. Try to send a message to Kepler's Rest. The young officer hesitated. At this range and speed, sir, I can't guarantee it'll get through. Send it anyway, Morrison insisted. If there's even the smallest chance they'll hear it, they deserve to know they're not alone. Collins nodded, transmitting a simple message. Hold on, help is coming. 2 days later, the USS Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the Kepler system's edge. What awaited them would test every ounce of their skill and resolve. Meanwhile, on the ground, another explosion rattled the command center of Kepler's Rest. Captain? Velter braced himself against the console as the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness until emergency power restored a faint glow. Shield strength at 15%. Engineer Moore shouted, his voice hoarse from hours of issuing commands. We're losing power faster than I can redirect it. Velter studied the tactical display. Red markers representing Vorthan forces swarmed across the colony's map. His security teams, brave and resourceful, were running out of ammunition and fallback positions. Mining lasers, meant for cutting rock, were no match for military-grade weaponry. Report from Sector 4. Officer Krenna called out, trembling as she read the update. Team 7 is pinned down near the water treatment plant. They've got wounded and can't move them. Send Team 12 to assist, Velter ordered, though he knew it was futile. Team 12 was already evacuating civilians to the bunkers. He didn't have enough personnel to cover every front. The distinctive crackle of Vorthan plasma rifles echoed. Closer outside, mining lasers buzzed in response, their hums a poor match for the enemy's precision firepower. Velter could feel his people losing ground in the residential district. Chaos reigned. Families ran through the streets, clutching only what they could carry. Children wailed as parents dragged them toward safety. Elderly colonists, too slow to flee, were helped along by neighbors, the underground bunkers, with their reinforced walls and independent air supplies, offered their only chance of survival. Security Officer Tern crouched behind an overturned cargo hauler, his converted mining laser trained on the advancing Vorthans. The weapon, bulky and awkward, wasn't designed for combat. Every shot drained its battery. Tern had only 2 spares left. 3 Vorthan soldiers moved closer, their black armor absorbing the laser's feeble impacts. Tern's weapon sputtered as its battery died. He fumbled for a replacement, but a plasma bolt scorched the air above him, heating the metal walls of his cover. The acrid stench of his singed fur filled his nostrils. "This is it," he whispered, resigned. At least his efforts had bought time for a nearby family to escape. Suddenly, mining supervisor Kelson appeared, wielding a heavy drilling unit designed for boring through stone. Kelson fired, and the high-pressure beam sent to Vorthans flying. "Backward, move!" Kelson yelled. Tern grabbed his gear and sprinted toward the shelter alongside Kelson. Behind them, more Vorthans appeared, but the 2 defenders made it inside just as the heavy blast doors sealed shut. Above the planet, Admiral Crexton monitored the invasion from his command ship. The operation was proceeding, but not as swiftly. As he'd hoped, colonists' resistance was unexpectedly fierce, and his troops were suffering heavy losses against improvised defenses. "Admiral, ground forces have secured 60% of the colony," his tactical officer reported. "But most civilians are in the bunkers." "How long to breach them?" Wexton demanded. 12 hours to cut through the blast doors, sir. They're well built." "Hours?" Crexton's yellow eyes narrowed with irritation. "I don't have that kind of time. The longer we linger, the greater the risk of Federation reinforcements. He turned his attention to the planet below, where the colony's shields flickered on the brink of collapse. Orbital bombardment would destroy surface structures, but leave the underground shelters untouched. Prepare the deep strike missiles, Crexton ordered. Load seismic charges. Will shake them out of their burrows. Will cause massive underground collapses. Civilian casualties will be catastrophic. The weapons officer said nervously. Good, Crexton replied, his voice icy. Dead civilians can't fight back, and the living ones make excellent slaves once they're properly terrified. In the colony command center, Captain Velter reviewed the grim final reports from his security teams. Half his officers were dead or critically wounded. The remainder were scattered in small, isolated groups, desperately low on ammunition and power. Shield strength at 8%. Engineer Mork called out. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the Vorthan fleet there. Preparing to fire their main guns? Velter nodded grimly. He had known this moment would come. When the shields failed, orbital bombardment would reduce the colony to ash. Afterward, the real nightmare would begin, as the Vorthons excavated the bunkers, capturing or killing everyone. Inside, send one last message, Velter ordered.
How?
Broadcast on all emergency frequencies. Tell anyone listening that we held as long as we could. Warn them that the Vorthons show no mercy to civilians. Tell them to remember us. Communications. Officer Yenta's hands shook as she transmitted the message. It was likely futile. The Vorthan's jamming was still in effect, but she had to try. Far away in hyperspace, USS Defiant hurtled toward Kepler's rest. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Torres stared at his controls, anxiety growing. With every flashing red warning light, "Come on," he muttered to the roaring reactors. "Hold it together for 18 more hours. These people are counting on us." The ship pressed onward through the void, carrying the fragile hopes of 50,000 innocents, unaware that salvation raced toward them. Above Kepler's rest, silence reigned in the cold vacuum of space. 23 Vorthan warships loomed over the planet like predatory shadows. In his flagship's command chair, Admiral Crexton watched the final preparations with satisfaction. "All ships ready, Admiral," his weapons officer reported. "Deep strike missiles are loaded with seismic charges. We're prepared to begin the bombardment." "Fire," Crexton ordered with a sharp-toothed grin. "Shake those burrowing rats out of their holes." The Vorthan fleet unleashed its payload. Explosions ripped across the colony's surface, annihilating buildings and overloading the remaining shield generators. Nothing now stood between the Vorthans and the vulnerable colonists. Then, space itself seemed to twist and tear. A massive vessel emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. Its gray hull bore the scars of countless battles, and its weapon ports glared like a predator's eyes. The USS Defiant had arrived, and it was furious. "Admiral, a Vorthan sensor operator cried out. Unknown vessel detected 2 kilometers long, human design, Ranger-class heavy cruiser. Crexton leaned forward, yellow eyes narrowing. How did they reach us so quickly? On the Defiance bridge, Captain Morrison studied the tactical display. 23 enemy ships against 1. The odds were grim, but Morrison had faced worse. His crew was prepared, and his ship was armed to the teeth. Collins opened a channel to all Vorthan vessels. Morrison commanded, "Channel open, sir." Collins confirmed. Morrison's voice boomed across the comms, reaching every ship in the Vorthon fleet. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. You are attacking civilians under our protection. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Admiral Crexton laughed, his guttural voice reverberating through the channel. "One human ship against my entire fleet? It's suicide, Captain. Turn around, or your wreckage will join the others." Morrison's reply was calm and unwavering. "No. Then you will die," Crexton snarled. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy that human vessel." The Vorthan fleet surged forward like a pack of predators. Black ships accelerated, weapons primed, plasma cannons and missile tubes, glowing with lethal energy. But Captain Morrison was ready. "Grant," he said, his voice steady. "You have tactical?" "Grant, you have tactical," Morrison said firmly to his second-in-command. "Show them what happens when they threaten innocent lives." Commander Grant's fingers moved swiftly across her console. Missiles loaded. Point defenses online. Fighters. Launching now. The first wave of Vorthan ships unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts and missiles streaking toward the Defiant. But the human ship's advanced point defense systems responded like a swarm of metallic wasps. Laser turrets cutting down missiles mid-flight. While shields absorbed plasma blasts that would have destroyed lesser ships, the Defiant retaliated. With deadly precision, human missiles, faster and more intelligent than anything the Vorthons had encountered, danced around enemy defenses to strike with surgical accuracy. The first Vorthan ship erupted in a fiery explosion. Impossible. Crexton bellowed on his flagship. "How did they penetrate our armor?" "Sir, their missiles are using adaptive algorithms," his tactical officer stammered, eyes glued to the sensors. "They're learning and adjusting with each attack." Flight Commander Sullivan's voice crackled over the comms. "Phoenix? Squadron engaging enemy fighters. They've got the numbers, but we've got the speed." On the planet's surface, Velter watched the battle unfold through the colony's fading sensors. He could scarcely believe his eyes. One ship was holding its own against an entire fleet and winning. "Who are these humans?" Officer Ko whispered. "How can they fight so many ships?" "I don't know," Velter replied, "but they came when no one else would. They're risking everything for us." The battle raged across the system. The Defiant moved like a masterful dancer, weaving through fire while striking with unmatched ferocity. Human fighters swarmed Vorthan vessels, their weapons slicing through. Once impervious armor in the engine room, Torres worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational. "Come on, beautiful," he muttered to the humming reactors. "Hold together just a little longer." The fusion reactors roared, fueling the Defiance. Shields, weapons, and engines in perfect unison. The ship operated like a living, lethal organism. Admiral Crexton stared at his tactical display in horror as his fleet disintegrated. 7 ships were already gone, and the Defiant seemed to predict every move. "Admiral, we must retreat," his tactical officer urged. "This ship is too advanced." "We can't win, no," Crexton roared. "Concentrate all fire on their engines. If we can't destroy them, we'll strand them here." The surviving Vorthan ships closed in. Plasma fire overwhelming even the Defiant's formidable defenses. "Shields at 60%, Grant reported. "They're targeting the engines." Morrison gripped his chair as the ship shuddered under the relentless assault. "Torres, can you give me more power?" "Already past safe limits, Captain," Torres replied. "Any more? And we risk losing containment." "Do it," Morrison ordered. "Where all these people have." The Defiant's engines roared, propelling the ship straight into the heart of the Vorthon formation. "Sullivan, bring the fighters back. We're going straight through," Morrison commanded. "Copy that, Captain. Phoenix Squadron returning." To base, the Defiant charged forward like a spear hurled by an enraged deity. Weapons fired in all directions, tearing through the Vorthan fleet. Ships collided in the chaos. And 3 more exploded under human fire. The surviving Vorthines scattered, creating gaps that Grant exploited. "Target their command ship," Morrison ordered. "Let's end this." Crexton watched the human vessel. Turned toward him, and for the first time in his life, he felt true fear. "All ships, protect the flagship," he shouted. But it was too late. The Defiant's main guns locked on and fired. Twin beams of pure energy streaked across space, obliterating the Vorthon flagship's shields and melting its armor in an instant.
Ow.
The ship disintegrated in a flash of light, and Crexton died without realizing what had hit him. The remaining Vorthan ships fell silent, their crews staring in shock at the void where their flagship had been. The Defiant's weaponry was beyond anything they had imagined. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, unwavering as the battle shifted in their favor. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, eyes fixed on the remaining Vorthan ships retreating into the void. 15 remained, engines flaring in desperation to escape. His expression was cold and unyielding. "Where do you think you're going?" he muttered. Grant glanced up from her station. "Captain, they're retreating. Should we let them go?" Morrison's gaze didn't waver. "No one threatens civilians," and walks away. "Not on my watch." He opened a channel to the fleeing ships. "Attention, Vorthan vessels. You came here to murder innocents, destroyed their defenses, and bombed their homes. Did you think there would be no consequences?" The Vorthan ships stayed silent, too focused on escaping to respond. Grant Morrison ordered, "Target their engines. I want them disabled, not destroyed. They'll stand trial for what they've done." "Yes, sir," she replied, her hands dancing over the targeting console. Missiles launched from the Defiant. Cutting through space like predators on the hunt, they dodged point defenses with uncanny precision, striking engine after engine. One by one, the Vorthan ships went. Dark, left adrift, and powerless. Surrender signals flooded in, desperate pleas ignored by Morrison. Mercy was a concept they should have considered before slaughtering civilians. Collins. "Patch me through to the colony," Morrison said. "Channel open, Captain." "This is Captain Morrison of the USS Defiant. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're sending medical teams and supplies to the surface. Hold tight, help is on the way." On the planet below, Velter stared at the console, disbelief etched on his face. The human's voice carried a calm authority, stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. "They did it," Officer Krenna whispered. "One ship against an entire fleet, and they won." "How?" Engineer Mork asked. Dvorthan's head. "Superior numbers? It should have been impossible." Velter watched the replay of the battle, the Defiant moving with deadly grace. Its weapons had shredded Vorthan armor, its crew unwavering under fire. "They didn't fight like a military," Velter said softly. "They fought like a family protecting their home." Every shot, every maneuver, it was personal. 2 hours later, the first human shuttle touched down in the colony plaza. Morrison emerged, followed by medical teams carrying supplies. He was smaller than expected, with gray hair and weary eyes, but his presence radiated quiet authority. "Dr. Rodriguez. Set up triage centers immediately, treating injured colonists with practiced efficiency." Torres led crews to restore power and communications. Sullivan organized search and rescue missions, deploying fighters to locate survivors in collapsed buildings. The humans worked tirelessly, each movement precise and purposeful. Morrison met Velter in the colony's administrative building. The Zapirian leader's nerves were apparent. But Morrison's handshake was firm yet respectful. "Captain Morrison," Velter began, "thank you." "How many casualties?" 327 dead, Velter replied solemnly. "Over 800 wounded. It could have been worse if you hadn't arrived." Morrison nodded grimly. "The Vorthons will answer for those deaths. Federation Command will see to it." Velter hesitated before asking, "How did one ship defeat so many?" Morrison looked out at his crew working below. "We didn't see enemies out there. We saw bullies hurting the defenseless. Humans don't calculate odds when lives are at stake. Just act. But your weapons, they help," Morrison admitted. "But the most important thing is why you fight. We weren't fighting for resources or glory. We fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. That's what makes the difference." Over the next week, the USS Defiant stayed in orbit, aiding in the colony's recovery. Human engineers collaborated with Zapirian technicians, restoring critical systems. Medical teams provided care and counseling for the traumatized. News of the Battle of Kepler's Rest spread like wildfire. Pirates and slavers began avoiding systems patrolled by humans. Aggressive empires reconsidered, targeting peaceful colonies. As the Defiant prepared to leave, Morrison stood in the rebuilt command center, gazing at the stars. A final transmission connected him to the planet below. "Kepler's Rest. This is the Defiant. We're departing the system. Take care of yourselves, and don't hesitate to call if you need help." "Thank you, Captain Morrison," Velter replied. "We will never forget what you've done for us." Morrison's voice was resolute. "Remember this. The galaxy is full of predators, but it's also full of people willing to stand up to them. You're not alone out here." The Defiant disappeared into hyperspace, leaving 50,000 grateful colonists behind. They resumed their lives secure in the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, the wolves of Terra stood watch, ready to hunt those who preyed on the innocent.